Before we begin this incredible true story of a police officer who was shot 17 times, died for 7 minutes, and came back with a divine mission that transformed American policing, if you believe that God can use our worst moments to create our greatest miracles, hit that like button now. If you're new here, subscribe and turn on notifications, because we share real testimonies of people who discovered that sometimes you have to die to truly learn how to live. Share this video with someone who needs to know that their darkest hour might be preparing them for their brightest purpose. Now, prepare yourself for the most shocking police transformation story you've ever heard. Police officer shot 17 times. What he saw during surgery will shock you. Officer Marcus Thompson adjusted his bulletproof vest as he stepped out of his patrol car into the cold Detroit morning. At 34, he had been patrolling the streets of the Motor City for 12 years, watching neighborhoods that once thrived with automotive prosperity crumble into urban decay and violence. Another day in paradise, Marcus muttered to his partner, Officer James Wilson, as they surveyed the abandoned houses and boarded up storefronts on 8 Mile Road. Marcus had grown up in these same streets, but the Detroit of his childhood was different. His father had worked at the Ford plant, and families had hope. Now, unemployment, drugs, and gang violence had turned his hometown into one of America's most dangerous cities. "Thompson, we got a call about a drug operation on Corktown," came the voice of Sergeant Rodriguez through the radio. "Narcotics needs backup for a raid. You and Wilson respond." Marcus had become hardened by years of seeing the worst of humanity. Drug dealers, gang members, domestic violence perpetrators, he had arrested them all. Somewhere along the way, he had stopped seeing them as people and started viewing them as problems to be solved with handcuffs and jail cells. "Copy that, Sarge. Wilson and I are en route." The house on Porter Street looked like dozens of other drug houses Marcus had raided. Windows covered with plywood, yard overgrown with weeds, and the telltale signs of heavy foot traffic despite its abandoned appearance. According to intelligence, we're looking at a major cocaine distribution center, Detective Sarah Martinez briefed the team. "Expect armed resistance. These guys have nothing to lose." Marcus checked his weapon and took his position. After 12 years on the force, raids like this had become routine. Get in, arrest the dealers, confiscate the drugs, and move on to the next case. He'd stopped thinking about the deeper issues, the poverty, desperation, and systemic problems that created these situations. "On my mark," Detective Martinez signaled. 3, 2, 1, go. The front door exploded inward as the tactical team breached the house. Marcus followed close behind, his training and adrenaline taking over as they moved through the darkened rooms. "Detroit police! Hands where we can see them!" The house erupted in chaos. Shouts, running footsteps, and then the sound that changed everything. Gunfire. The first bullet caught Marcus in the shoulder, spinning him around. The second hit his chest, but his vest absorbed most of the impact. Then the shooting became a deadly symphony as multiple gunmen opened fire from different rooms. Marcus felt bullets tearing through his body, his legs, his arms, his abdomen. He tried to return fire, but his strength was leaving him rapidly. Through the haze of pain and blood loss, he counted 17 separate impacts before his vision began to fade. "Officer down! Officer down!" Wilson's voice echoed through the house as Marcus collapsed on the blood-stained floor. As the paramedics worked frantically to keep him alive during the desperate race to Detroit Medical Center, Marcus felt himself slipping away from consciousness. He had no idea that he was about to embark on the most extraordinary journey of his life. The trauma bay at Detroit Medical Center erupted into controlled chaos as the paramedics rushed Marcus through the automatic doors. Blood soaked through multiple bandages as the medical team worked to assess the damage from 17 gunshot wounds. "We've got multiple GSWs to the chest, abdomen, arms, and legs," shouted Dr. Amanda Foster, the trauma surgeon on duty. "He's lost massive amounts of blood. Get me 4 units of O-negative stat." Marcus drifted in and out of consciousness as nurses cut away his uniform and attached monitors. Through the haze of pain medication, he could hear urgent voices discussing his injuries. "Bullet fragments near the heart," called out Dr. Foster. "Another one's lodged against his spine. We need to get him to OR immediately." "His pressure's dropping fast," warned Nurse Patricia Coleman. "BP is 60/30 and falling." As they wheeled Marcus toward the operating room, he caught a glimpse of his reflection in the glass doors. He looked like he had been through a war zone, which, in Detroit's most dangerous neighborhood, he essentially had. In the OR, Dr. Foster and her team worked with surgical precision to repair the damage. But despite their expertise, Marcus's body was shutting down from trauma and blood loss. "I'm losing him," Dr. Foster announced grimly. "He's going into cardiac arrest." The heart monitor's steady beep transformed into the dreaded flatline tone that every medical professional fears. Marcus Thompson was clinically dead. "Starting CPR," called out Dr. Foster as she began chest compressions. "Charge the defibrillator to 200 joules. For 7 minutes, the medical team fought to bring Marcus back. They shocked his heart 3 times, pumped his chest continuously, and administered every medication in their arsenal. "It's been 7 minutes, Dr. A," Foster said, sweat beading on her forehead. "How long do we continue?" But while the medical team fought to restart his heart, Marcus was experiencing something that would change his understanding of life, death, and his purpose as a police officer forever. He found himself floating above the operating table, watching Dr. Foster work on his body. There was no pain, no fear, only a profound sense of peace he had never experienced during his 12 years of dealing with Detroit's violence. Suddenly, Marcus felt himself being drawn upward through what appeared to be a tunnel of brilliant warm light. The sensation was unlike anything he had ever experienced, pure love and acceptance washing over him in waves. At the end of the tunnel, Marcus encountered a figure he immediately recognized, though he had never been particularly religious. Jesus Christ stood before him, radiating an indescribable love and compassion. "Marcus," Jesus said in a voice that seemed to resonate through every fiber of his being, "you've been serving and protecting, but you haven't been loving." "Lord, I don't understand. I've been doing my job." "Your job is more than arresting criminals. Your calling is to see the broken hearts behind the broken laws." Jesus showed Marcus visions that took his breath away. Scenes of the drug dealers he had arrested as children, innocent and hopeful, before poverty and abandonment led them astray. He saw families destroyed by addiction and communities crying out for healing rather than punishment. "Marcus, I'm sending you back with a new mission. You're going to transform not just how you police, but how your entire department serves my people." "How, Lord?" "With the same love I'm showing you right now." Back in the OR, Dr. Foster was about to call time of death when suddenly, impossibly, the heart monitor beeped once, then twice, then resumed a steady rhythm. Marcus Thompson had returned from the dead, and nothing would ever be the same. Marcus's eyes fluttered open to the sterile white ceiling of the Detroit Medical Center ICU. Every part of his body ached, but he was overwhelmed by a sense of purpose he had never felt before. The experience in heaven felt more real than the hospital room around him. "Marcus? Oh my God, you're awake!" His wife Sarah rushed to his bedside, tears streaming down her face. "The doctors said, they said you died for 7 minutes." "I did die, Sarah, and I saw something incredible." Dr. Foster entered the room with a mixture of amazement and medical skepticism. "Officer Thompson, what you survived should have been impossible. 17 gunshot wounds, massive blood loss, and 7 minutes of clinical death. By every medical standard, you shouldn't be here." "Doctor, I need to tell you what I experienced while I was gone." "Patients often report hallucinations during trauma and oxygen deprivation," Dr. Foster explained gently. "This wasn't a hallucination. I was in heaven. I spoke with Jesus Christ, and he gave me a mission." Over the next 3 days, as Marcus recovered with miraculous speed, He shared his experience with everyone who would listen. The nurses were amazed by his transformation from the hardened cop they had admitted to this man radiating peace and purpose. Sergeant Rodriguez visited on the fourth day, bringing news that both relieved and troubled Marcus. The three shooters are in custody, Rodriguez reported. Damon Williams, age 19, Terrell Jackson, age 21, Marcus Johnson, age 23, all facing attempted murder charges. I want to see them, Marcus said without hesitation. What? Marcus, these punks tried to kill you. They shot you 17 times. Sarge, I saw their faces in my vision. I saw them as children before the streets got hold of them. I need to talk to them. Thompson, I think that near-death experience scrambled your brain. But Marcus was determined. Despite protest from his family, his sergeant, and his doctors, he insisted on visiting the Wayne County Jail, where his attackers were being held. The first meeting was with Damon Williams, the youngest shooter. When Damon was brought into the visiting room in shackles, he looked defiant and unrepentant. So the pig wants to gloat? Damon sneered. Come to see how tough your vest was? Marcus looked at the young man with eyes that now saw beyond the criminal facade. In his vision, Jesus had shown him Damon at age 8, crying because his father had been shot in a drive-by. He had seen Damon's mother working 3 jobs, leaving him alone on dangerous streets. Damon, I didn't come here to gloat. I came to tell you that I forgive you. The words hit Damon like a physical blow. His defiant expression cracked, replaced by confusion and something that might have been hope. What kind of game you playing, cop? No game. While you and your friends were shooting me, I died and went to heaven. Jesus showed me your life, your real life. I saw the 8-year-old boy who lost his father. I saw the kid who just wanted someone to care about him. Tears began forming in Damon's eyes, despite his efforts to maintain his hard exterior. You don't know nothing about my life. I know you started selling drugs at 14 to help your mother pay rent. I know you joined the crew because you were tired of being hungry and afraid. I know you shot at me not because you're evil, but because you're lost. Damon broke down completely, sobbing like the frightened child Marcus had seen in his vision. Officer, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't want to hurt nobody, but they said if I didn't prove myself, Damon, I'm going to help you. But you have to want to change. What Marcus didn't know was that this conversation was being recorded by jail security, and by the next day, the footage would go viral across social media, shocking the nation. Within 24 hours, the security footage of Marcus forgiving his teenage shooter had been viewed over 5 million times across social media platforms. News outlets from CNN to Fox News were calling it the miracle in Detroit and the cop who came back from heaven. This is unprecedented, said Captain Robert Hayes during an emergency meeting at the Detroit Police Department. We've got reporters from around the world wanting to interview Thompson. The phone hasn't stopped ringing. Marcus sat in the captain's office, still recovering from his injuries, but insistent on returning to work as soon as possible. Captain, I don't want fame. I want to change how we police this city. Thompson, what you did was admirable. But we can't have officers hugging criminals. We have protocols. Sir, those protocols aren't working. Detroit has one of the highest crime rates in America, and all we're doing is playing catch and release with the same people over and over. Marcus pulled out a notebook where he had been sketching ideas since his return from heaven. What if instead of just arresting drug dealers, we connected them with job training? What if we partnered with churches and community centers to address the root causes of crime? Captain Hayes looked skeptical. Thompson, you're talking about social work, not police work. I'm talking about following the mission Jesus gave me in heaven. The conversation was interrupted by Sergeant Rodriguez, bursting through the door. Captain, you need to see this. The other 2 shooters are asking to speak with Thompson. Terrell Jackson's mother is outside, begging to meet the officer who forgave her son. That afternoon, Marcus met with Mrs. Patricia Jackson, a woman who worked 2 jobs as a hotel housekeeper and still couldn't keep her son away from the streets. Officer Thompson, she wept, I watched that video of you talking to Damon Williams. I've been praying for someone to reach my Terrell before it's too late. Mrs. Jackson, your son shot me 17 times, but in heaven I saw his heart. He's not evil, he's hurting. Can you help him? Can you help all of them? I'm going to try, but I need the community's support. Within days, Marcus's hospital room had become an unofficial meeting place for community leaders, pastors, and activists who had heard about his transformation. Officer Thompson, said Reverend Michael Davis from New Hope Baptist Church, we've been fighting for police reform for years, but what you're proposing is revolutionary. Reverend, Jesus didn't just preach love, he demonstrated it. I died and came back with a mandate to show that same love to people society has written off. Pastor Maria Gonzalez from Sacred Heart Catholic Church added, we've got job training programs, addiction counseling, and mentorship opportunities. If the police department would partner with us instead of just dropping off arrestees, that's exactly what I want to do, Marcus interrupted excitedly. Create a bridge between law enforcement and faith communities. The breakthrough came when Damon Williams agreed to testify about his experience meeting Marcus. The young man who had tried to kill a police officer now spoke passionately about forgiveness and second chances. Officer Thompson didn't have to forgive me, Damon told a packed courtroom during his sentencing hearing. He could have let me rot in jail, but he saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself. The judge, moved by the unprecedented testimony, agreed to a plea deal that included community service, job training, and mentorship, all supervised by a new program Marcus was developing. Your Honor, Marcus addressed the court, I'm proposing the Creation Station program, giving young offenders the chance to build something instead of just tearing things down. As news of the program spread, Marcus received a call that would change everything. Officer Thompson, this is Mayor Jennifer Williams. I want to discuss making your approach citywide policy. But Marcus had no idea that his biggest challenge was yet to come. Resistance from within his own police department. The Detroit Police Department's morning briefing room was unusually tense as Marcus walked in for his first day back on active duty. Conversations stopped, and his fellow officers stared at him with a mixture of curiosity, skepticism, and outright hostility. Well, well, look who's back, sneered Officer Rick Morrison, a 20-year veteran known for his aggressive tactics. Saint Marcus, the cop who thinks criminals just need a hug. Morrison, I'm still the same officer who's had your back for 12 years, Marcus replied calmly. No, you're not. The Marcus I knew would want those punks who shot him locked up forever, not enrolled in some feel-good program. Sergeant Rodriguez called for order. All right, listen up. Thompson's back on duty, partnered with Wilson. I want everyone to focus on police work, not social media fame. During their first patrol, Marcus could feel the tension from his partner James Wilson, who had been his closest friend on the force. Marcus, I need to ask you straight up. Are you still going to have my back out here? Because this forgiveness stuff sounds great on TV, but on the streets, hesitation gets cops killed. James, my experience in heaven didn't make me weak. It made me understand that real strength comes from seeing people's potential, not just their problems. Their radio crackled. Units respond to domestic disturbance, 1247 Gratiot Avenue. Reports of male threatening female with weapon. When they arrived at the rundown apartment building, they found Lamar Green, 28, holding a kitchen knife while screaming at his girlfriend, Crystal. The old Marcus would have immediately drawn his weapon and prepared for confrontation. Detroit police, drop the weapon! But instead of escalating, Marcus noticed something others missed. Track marks on Lamar's arms, the trembling of withdrawal, and desperation in his eyes rather than malice. Lamar, I can see you're hurting, man. Whatever's going on, we can work through this without anyone getting hurt. You don't understand. I lost my job, we're getting evicted, and I can't take care of my family. Wilson whispered urgently. Marcus, he's got a knife. Take him down. But Marcus slowly holstered his weapon and stepped closer. Lamar, I've been where you are, rock bottom, feeling like there's no way out. but there is. How would you know? Because I died 3 weeks ago and came back with a mission to help people exactly like you. For the next 20 minutes, Marcus talked Lamar down, connecting him with emergency housing assistance and drug treatment programs, instead of simply arresting him. Thompson, what the hell was that? Wilson exploded once they were back in the car. He had a weapon. You could have gotten us both killed. James, did you see what happened? We resolved a domestic violence situation without anyone getting hurt, arrested, or traumatized. Lamar's getting help instead of a criminal record. And next time he snaps, he might actually hurt someone because you didn't take him off the streets. Word of Marcus's new approach spread quickly through the department. That evening, he received a call from Detective Tony Ricci. Thompson, we need to talk. Meet me at Murphy's Pub. At the bar, Ricci was joined by 5 other veteran officers, all looking serious. Marcus, we respect what you went through, Ricci began, but this soft approach is making us all look weak. The criminals are starting to think they can get away with anything if they just cry about their childhood. That's not what I'm doing, isn't it? You forgave the punks who tried to kill you. You're turning domestic calls into therapy sessions. What's next? Meditation circles with gang members? Officer Jennifer Hayes, one of the few supporters, spoke up. Actually, Marcus's clearance rate is up 40% since he came back. People are cooperating because they trust him. Hayes, whose side are you on? Morrison demanded. The conversation was interrupted when Marcus's phone rang. It was Captain Hayes. Thompson, get down to the station immediately. Internal Affairs wants to see you. As Marcus drove to the station, he realized his heavenly mission was about to face its biggest earthly test. The Internal Affairs office at the Detroit Police Department felt like a courtroom as Marcus sat across from Lieutenant Barbara Chen and Sergeant Michael O'Connor. His union representative, Attorney David Walsh, sat beside him with a thick folder of complaints. Officer Thompson, Lieutenant Chen began, we've received multiple complaints about your conduct since returning to duty. Failure to follow protocol, unauthorized community outreach, and what some colleagues are calling reckless endangerment. Lieutenant, every action I've taken has been within department guidelines. Is it within guidelines to give your personal phone number to arrestees? Sergeant O'Connor challenged. Because Damon Williams has been calling you regularly from juvenile detention. Damon is part of an approved mentorship program, a program you created without authorization, Chen countered. Thompson, we understand you went through trauma, but this department can't function if officers decide to freelance their own policies. Attorney Walsh intervened. My client has exemplary service records and has done nothing that violates departmental regulations. What about refusing backup during the Gratiot Avenue domestic call? O'Connor pressed. Officer Wilson reported that you disregarded his safety concerns. I successfully de-escalated a volatile situation without violence. Isn't that what community policing is supposed to achieve? Lieutenant Chen leaned forward. Thompson, there's talk that your near-death experience has affected your judgment. Some officers are requesting psychological evaluation. Ma'am, I've never been more clear-headed in my life. The meeting was interrupted when Captain Hayes burst through the door with a folder marked urgent. Chen, you need to see these numbers. Thompson's sector has seen a 35% reduction in violent crime since he returned to duty. Drug arrests are down, but addiction treatment referrals are up 200%. Captain, statistics don't change the fact that he's not following established procedures, O'Connor argued. What procedures? The ones that gave us the highest crime rate in America? Hayes shot back. That evening, Marcus returned home to find Sarah waiting with dinner and a worried expression. Marcus, I'm scared. Officer Morrison's wife called me today. She said some of the guys are talking about you like you're not reliable anymore. Sarah, Jesus didn't promise this would be easy. He promised it would be worth it. But what if they're right? What if your experience changed you too much? Marcus took his wife's hands. Sarah, for 12 years I came home angry, frustrated, feeling like nothing I did mattered. Now I come home knowing I'm making a real difference. Which version of your husband do you prefer? The next morning brought news that would change everything. Marcus received a call from Mayor Jennifer Williams. "Officer Thompson, I want you to know that I've been monitoring your work personally. The results speak for themselves." "Thank you, Mayor Williams." "Marcus, I'm creating a new position, Director of Community Police Relations. I want you to head up a pilot program that could revolutionize law enforcement in Detroit." "What about internal affairs? They're investigating my methods." "Let me worry about IA. I'm more concerned about results than bureaucratic complaints." When Marcus arrived at the station, he found his locker had been vandalized with the words "Traitor Cop" spray-painted across it. But beside his defaced locker was an envelope with the mayor's official seal. Inside was his appointment letter and a handwritten note. "Sometimes God uses the most wounded healers to transform systems that seem impossible to change." Mayor Williams. As Marcus read the note, Officer Hayes approached with a group of younger officers. "Thompson, we've been talking. Whatever the old guard thinks, we want to learn your approach. The community is responding to you like no cop I've ever seen. Are you sure? This could hurt your careers." "Marcus," said Officer Rodriguez Jr., "the son of his sergeant, my dad grew up in these neighborhoods. He told me what you're doing is what real policing looks like." For the first time since returning from heaven, Marcus felt like his mission might actually succeed. But he had no idea that his biggest test was coming the very next day. The call came in at 2:47 a.m. "Officer down, 8 Mile Road and Conant Street. Officer Morrison has been shot." Marcus's blood ran cold as he raced to the scene. Despite their conflicts, Morrison was still a brother in blue, and Marcus knew that his response to this situation would define everything he claimed to believe. When Marcus arrived, he found Morrison on a stretcher being loaded into an ambulance, conscious but bleeding from a shoulder wound. "Thompson," Morrison called out weakly, "the shooter. It's one of your boys, Terrell Jackson." Marcus felt like he'd been punched in the gut. Terrell was the second shooter from his own attack, one of the young men he'd been mentoring through the Creation Station program. "Morrison, what happened?" "Routine traffic stop. The kid panicked when he saw my car, started shooting." Morrison grabbed Marcus's arm. "Your forgiveness program just put another cop in the hospital." At the hospital, Marcus paced the waiting room as news of the shooting spread. Captain Hayes arrived, looking grim. "Thompson, this is a disaster. Morrison's stable, but the media's going crazy. Cop who forgave shooter gets another officer shot. That's the headline running on every news channel." "Captain, I need to talk to Terrell. There has to be more to this story." "Absolutely not. You're off this case completely." But Marcus couldn't let it go. Against direct orders, he drove to the Wayne County Jail where Terrell was being held in isolation. "Terrell, what happened? You were doing so well in the program." The 21-year-old looked devastated, nothing like the hardened criminal the media was portraying. "Officer Thompson, I swear I didn't mean to shoot nobody. When I saw that police car, I panicked." "Why? You've been clean for 3 weeks." "Because my baby's sister got shot yesterday, drive-by shooting, and she's only 6 years old. I was driving around crazy trying to find who did it, and when I saw the cop car," Marcus felt his heart breaking. "Terrell, why didn't you call me? I didn't want to disappoint you again. You believed in me when nobody else would, and I felt like I was letting you down." That evening, Marcus made a decision that shocked everyone. He called a press conference. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to address the shooting of Officer Morrison by Terrell Jackson." The room filled with hostile reporters, expecting him to admit his program had failed. "Terrell Jackson shot Officer Morrison, and that was wrong. But before you judge my mentorship program, let me give you the full story." Marcus explained Terrell's sister's shooting, his panic, and the complex trauma that led to the incident. "I'm not excusing what Terrell did, but I am saying that hurt people hurt people. Our choice is simple. We can respond to violence with more violence, or we can address the root causes." "Officer Thompson," challenged a reporter, "doesn't this prove that some criminals can't be reformed?" "No, it proves that healing takes time, and sometimes people stumble. But I'm not giving up on Terrell, just like Jesus didn't give up on me when I died and came back. The room erupted with questions, but Marcus held up his hand. Tomorrow, I'm visiting Officer Morrison to apologize personally. Then I'm visiting Terrell's 6-year-old sister in the hospital, because that's what Jesus would do. After the press conference, Marcus received a call from an unexpected source. Thompson, this is Morrison. I watched your press conference from my hospital bed. Rick, I am so sorry. This is my fault. No, it's not. Thompson, I've been thinking about what you said, about seeing people's potential instead of just their problems. That kid didn't shoot me because he's evil. He shot me because he's broken. Morrison, what are you saying? I'm saying, maybe it's time this old dog learned some new tricks. When I get out of here, I want to work with you. As Marcus hung up the phone, he realized that sometimes God uses our greatest failures to create our most important victories. 2 years after his near-death experience, Marcus Thompson found himself walking through the halls of the United States Capitol, preparing to testify before the Senate Judiciary Committee on Police Reform. The boy from Detroit streets was about to address the most powerful lawmakers in America. Officer Thompson, Senator Elizabeth Warren greeted him before the hearing. Your work in Detroit has caught national attention. We're hoping your testimony can help us craft meaningful police reform legislation. Senator, I'm just sharing what Jesus showed me during those 7 minutes in heaven, that every person deserves to be seen as a human being, not just a case number. The committee room was packed with police chiefs, civil rights leaders, and family members of police shooting victims. Marcus recognized several faces from news coverage of high-profile cases across the country. Honorable senators, Marcus began his testimony. 3 years ago, I was a hardened cop who saw criminals as enemies to be defeated. Today, I oversee programs that have reduced violent crime by 60% while increasing community trust by 400%. This transformation didn't come from new training manuals. It came from dying and meeting Jesus Christ. Marcus shared his complete story: the shooting, his clinical death, his encounter with Christ, and the revolutionary changes that followed in Detroit. The young men who shot me 17 times are now community leaders helping other at-risk youth. Officer Morrison, who was shot by one of my mentees, is now my strongest advocate. This is what happens when we choose restoration over retribution. Senator Ted Cruz asked, Officer Thompson, critics say your approach is too soft on crime. How do you respond to that? Senator, there's nothing soft about addressing root causes of crime. It's harder work than just making arrests, but the results speak for themselves. We're preventing crime instead of just responding to it. After his testimony, Marcus was approached by Chief William Bratton, former NYPD commissioner. Thompson, I've been in law enforcement for 40 years. What you've accomplished in Detroit is unprecedented. We want you to consult with major departments nationwide. That evening, Marcus received a call that would change his life forever. Officer Thompson, this is Janet Mills from the White House. The president would like to meet with you tomorrow about heading a new federal initiative. The next day, Marcus found himself in the Oval Office, sitting across from the President of the United States. Marcus, may I call you Marcus? Your story has captured the nation's imagination. But more importantly, your results have proven that community policing can work on a large scale. Mr. President, I'm honored, but I'm just a Detroit cop who learned that love is stronger than fear. That's exactly why I want you to head the new National Community Restoration Initiative. We're allocating $500 million to replicate your model in 50 cities. Sir, I don't have a college degree. I've never run a federal program. Marcus, you have something more valuable than credentials. You have a vision that works. Will you accept? That night, Marcus called Sarah from his hotel room in Washington. Sarah, they want me to lead a national program. It would mean traveling constantly, working with police departments across the country. Adut, Marcus, remember what you told me about your vision in heaven. Jesus said you would transform policing nationally. This is exactly what he prepared you for. Are you sure we can handle this? Honey, if God can bring you back from the dead to forgive your attackers, he can help us figure out the logistics. The next morning, Marcus accepted the position as director of the National Community Restoration Initiative. Within months, the Detroit model was being implemented in cities from Los Angeles to New York. Police departments reported dramatic improvements in community relations and crime reduction. But Marcus's greatest moment came when he received a letter from Damon Williams, now 22 and a college senior studying criminal justice. Mr. Thompson, I wanted you to know that I just got accepted to the FBI Academy. They said my background as a former gang member gives me unique insights into criminal behavior. I want to spend my career helping other kids like I used to be. Thank you for showing me that my past doesn't define my future. As Marcus read the letter in his new Washington office, he understood that his 7 minutes in heaven had been preparation for a lifetime of resurrection, bringing dead dreams back to life, one person at a time. 5 years after his near-death experience, Marcus Thompson stood before 15,000 police officers at the National Law Enforcement Convention in Las Vegas. At 39, he had become the most influential voice in American policing, but more importantly, he had fulfilled the mission Jesus had given him during those 7 minutes in heaven. Fellow officers, Marcus began, when I was shot 17 times on the streets of Detroit, I thought my story was ending. But sometimes, what looks like death is actually birth. Birth of a new purpose, a new understanding, a new way to serve and protect. The audience was filled with police chiefs who had implemented the community restoration model in their departments. Crime rates had dropped an average of 45% in participating cities, while officer satisfaction and community trust had reached historic highs. Today, I want to share some numbers that prove love is not weakness. It's the strongest force in law enforcement. Marcus clicked to a slide showing national statistics. Violent crime down 32% in program cities. Officer-involved shootings reduced by 67%. Community complaints against police decreased by 78%. But most importantly, officer suicide rates down 54%. In the audience, Marcus spotted familiar faces. Officer Morrison, now Chief Morrison of Detroit PD, Damon Williams, fresh from FBI Academy graduation, and Dr. Foster, who had started a national program documenting near-death experiences in medical settings. I see many success stories in this room, Marcus continued, but our greatest victories aren't statistics. They're individual lives transformed by the power of redemption. After his speech, Marcus was approached by a young officer from Phoenix. Director Thompson, I have to tell you, your story saved my career. I was ready to quit after 15 years because I'd lost hope. Your model reminded me why I became a cop. That evening, at the awards banquet, Marcus received the International Association of Chiefs of Police Lifetime Achievement Award, unprecedented for someone who had only been in leadership for 5 years. This award doesn't belong to me, Marcus said, holding the crystal trophy. It belongs to every officer who chose to see potential instead of problems, to every community member who gave police a second chance, and to every former criminal who became a community leader. The next morning, Marcus flew back to Detroit for a special ceremony. The old drug house where he had been shot was being dedicated as the Marcus Thompson Center for Community Healing, a place where former gang members now mentored at-risk youth. Mr. Thompson, said 12-year-old Isaiah, whose older brother had been saved from gang recruitment through the program. My teacher says you died and came back to life. Is that really true? Yes, Isaiah. And do you know what I learned in heaven? What? That every single person, including you, has a purpose so important that God will move heaven and earth to make sure it happens. That afternoon, Marcus visited Detroit Medical Center, where Dr. Foster was treating a police officer who had been shot in the line of duty. Marcus, we've had 3 more officers report near-death experiences this year. 2 of them specifically mentioned seeing you in their visions, telling them to choose love over fear. Dr. Foster, Jesus told me that my experience would create ripples far beyond what I could imagine. Well, those ripples have become waves. We've documented over 200 similar cases nationwide of officers having spiritual experiences that changed their approach to policing. That evening, Marcus returned to his childhood home in Detroit, where his mother had prepared his favorite meal. "Marcus, I'm so proud of you. Your father would be amazed to see what you've become." "Mama, I'm just a Detroit cop who learned that sometimes you have to die to really live." "Son, you've changed how police work in this whole country. That's not just anything." As Marcus drove through the streets of Detroit that night, he passed the memorial where his transformation had begun. He stopped and stood before the plaque that read, "In memory of all officers who gave their lives in service, and in honor of those who found new life in service." His phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Watching the news coverage of your speech. The kids at the center are calling you the cop who brought heaven to earth. I love you." As Marcus looked up at the Detroit skyline, a city that had been reborn just as he had been, he whispered a prayer of gratitude. "Jesus, you told me that my death would become life for others. Thank you for showing me that resurrection isn't just something that happened 2,000 years ago. It's something that can happen today, in every heart that chooses love over hate, healing over harm, hope over despair." The officer who had been shot 17 times and died for 7 minutes had learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes God allows us to experience death so we can teach the world how to truly live. Marcus Thompson's legacy wasn't just changing policing. It was proving that with God, any life can be resurrected, any system can be transformed, and any heart can be healed. The miracle wasn't that he had visited heaven. The miracle was that he had brought heaven back to earth. Marcus Thompson's story continues to transform law enforcement across America and around the world. His community restoration model now operates in over 200 cities, proving that love truly is stronger than fear and that redemption is possible for everyone. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that no situation is too broken for God to resurrect, share this testimony with someone who needs to know that their worst day might be preparation for their greatest purpose. Like this video if you believe that sometimes we have to lose our old life to find our true calling. Subscribe, because we'll continue sharing real testimonies that prove God can use anyone's death, literal or metaphorical, to bring life to others. Remember, your greatest breakdown might be setting you up for your greatest breakthrough. Your deepest valley might be preparing you for your highest mountain, and sometimes what looks like the end is actually just the beginning. Share Marcus's miracle. Your story of resurrection might be exactly what someone needs to believe in second chances.